Collaboration's really hard, and it feels like I've been in the sector now too many decades, and it feels like we're always being told to collaborate, to work in partnership, to stop duplication, to be more efficient. And I don't think anybody kind of doesn't aspire to do that. I think we're all just so busy that actually it's difficult to find the time to do it properly. This workshop has really outlined how to do it properly and to actually make sure there's a process. And I think Ken said something at the very start. It won't happen by magic. You have to plan it. It has to be purposeful. And as I was sitting at my table and reflecting on some collaborations that have gone well, not gone well, definitely the bit about power and relationships and having that real honest conversation at the start about why are we here and what are we going to do. But also the what are we not going to do, what's off the table, what's not to be included in this. Because I think sometimes that's where things go wrong too, when collaborations people think, well, why did you go and do that without me? Because we never agreed we would do that together. It wasn't on the table. For me as well, it was the bit at the end where we talked about internal and external collaboration, because sometimes you have to make sure your own house is in order first, don't you? And you have these experiences, not talking personally, of course, this would never happen to me, where the chief executive runs off and has a great idea to work with another organisation and brings it so far and then realises that internally your organisation isn't fit for purpose. They haven't got those skills of collaboration. They don't understand what you mean when you say collaboration. They see it as giving away their power, and why are you doing that, and why are you making sure that it's not just our logo, and it becomes about something that you weren't prepared for. When as CEO you were trying to be all strategic and fly away off and do really interesting stuff. So for me it was about getting the internal collaboration, your staff ready for that internally, having those conversations amongst your own teams and making sure you bring them along with you along the journey, because I think that would add to sustainability too. So that's my comments.
I was asked to reflect on sort of some of the themes that came up, what resonated for me, and then what's my own view. And actually I'm kind of curious myself to see is my own view different to what I heard. I think some of the themes that came up for me were around even that piece around conscious alignment, so that when you go into something that you make the time and people are aware and discussing their alignment. But I think there's even a step before that in terms of being conscious before you go in the first place about what you're going to do and how you're going to behave, so that you can achieve that. So it's very much around your behaviours before you go in. There was another phrase used in it, and I'm not sure if I probably didn't pick up the context, but what it struck for me was partners on paper. So I think quite often we see in policy documents and plans and things where it's all written in lovely language as if we are all partners, but the actual feeling and experience you get from being in that dynamic doesn't always feel that way. And sometimes partnership can be a top-down experience, and certainly that resonated at the table we were at in terms of some of the context people were reflecting on in terms of how they felt in terms of being in that collaboration setting. I know myself, if experienced in terms of working in a highly structured state agency, sometimes the collaboration can be seen as nice to have but not necessary. And that can be quite hard to keep yourself motivated and working in that context where actually the people around you are perhaps more in a crisis and urgent mode in terms of responding, whereas in a collaboration you really want to take care of the process and you want to take it slowly and put the foundations in and make sure everybody's on board in the first place, and sometimes the situation or your colleagues around you aren't in that space because they need something, they need it now. And we were all in that space, I suppose, around maybe responding in terms of Ukraine and the displacement of so many families and having to get something up and running and do it quickly and do it urgently, and yet wanting to do it well and wanting to do it properly and wanting to, I suppose, respect your partners in that. I think the SES has presented some really useful learning and a really useful structure if we can take the time to step back and consciously enter a collaboration and bring some of those tools with us. So I really want to thank you for that. I do think that there's something to be said for those intermediaries or those people with the skills that can help you and guide you. Because the reality is that quite often collaboration is seen as a side of desk job. It's like not really my real job. It's like what I have to do on top of my real job. And I do think there's, the time has come for us to recognise that actually it's not a side of desk. It's actually a core part of what we're doing. But sometimes it's good to have somebody come in from the outside and carry some of that burden that people talked about in terms of looking after the process and also bringing skills. Can I keep going? Because I have a few more things to say. Some of the things that resonated with me, or maybe that struck me, was just, sometimes the foundation or the what brings people together can be the funding. But I suppose in my role, one of the things I have to do is capture maybe some of the output in terms of Children and Young People Services Committees. And one really important thing for me, which is less prominent, is just that pooling of resources. We kind of take it for granted. It could be buildings, it could be expertise or knowledge, it could be staff time, it could be even literature around messages around health promotion or whatever it happens to be. So that's a really important thing to recognise as well, that we can pool things as well. It's not just money. Although that's what sometimes brings us to the table. I think maybe on your second or third turn or dance around the floor, maybe you can collaborate where you're bringing your own resources to the table, which I know can sound a little bit maybe demanding in times of constrained resources, but we actually have a load of resources. So just there's a load of words and multiplicity of words around collaboration. So again, not everybody knows what we're talking about when we say collaboration. They may be in cooperation mode or coordination mode. So I think that's something just to bear in mind. And I loved the idea of the guiding principles and the commitments. Sometimes we would use a terms of reference for that, which, effectively does a similar thing. And I think having it as a standing item on your agenda around going back and reflecting on that is really, really practical and yet simple. It's not an insurmountable thing to have that down. And I think also in terms of your stakeholders, it's okay sometimes to have a one-to-one, do some individual work in your collaboration. Bring somebody back on board, invite somebody in, sustain somebody. So I think they were, really useful things. And I suppose just then in terms of my own view, in case you haven't heard my own view, I like that term mutual accountability. So I know you said that there's one person is accountable in the end, but I think in terms of mutual accountability, it's about everybody around the table holding everybody else accountable for their performance in the partnership. And I think that's really would be wonderful if we can get to that space in terms of collaborations, that shared responsibility, the shared results and the shared credit. We've all been in the room where our logo was left off the brochure or the booklet or the report, and nobody wants that to happen. I think really good governance though as well, just maybe putting in a little bit of context. I've worked in the C&V sector for 21 years and in a state agency for 5. And I think, the dynamic and the context in which people are working in state agencies can be very, very different in terms of the structure, the top-down nature, the governance, the oversight, the expectations, the dynamic in terms of the power. They're also experiencing that themselves internally. So I suppose it's also to be aware maybe of the context or the situation or the culture some of the people that you're collaborating with are coming from. I suppose just in terms of wrapping up for me, systems are made of people. And I think sometimes efforts at collaboration are diminished or dismissed with the assertion that, those committees, they're really dependent on personalities and individuals, But I really believe that you can create and sustain a space for people to collaborate and to practice putting collaboration into practice and investing in that over time. There is a skill set to collaboration actually, and not everybody has it. You're not necessarily always born with it, but you can develop it and you can learn and you can grow, and those skills can be developed, and I think perhaps that needs more recognition. So just to say thank you very much.